Hi, my name is Kristen. This is Kristen Craze Books. So October was a bit of a strange reading month for me. Not my best month of the year, even just in terms of personal life. Losing my cat really disrupted my reading, but I did manage to get to 8 books in the end, and some of them were really stellar. I had 3 5-star reads this month, and one of them is actually a 2022 release that I had an e-arc of and I absolutely fell in love with. So we'll get to that later because I'm going to rank these from a least favorite to my most favorite book of the month, and we'll just get right into it. So my lowest rated book of the month is The Woods Are Always Watching by Stephanie Perkins. I actually rated this a 1.5 stars. I think that is my lowest rating of the year, either that or The Maidens. And that happens with thrillers for me quite a bit. I read There's Someone in Your House by Stephanie Perkins a couple years ago, maybe even last year, and I thought it was fun. I thought it was a great slasher, teen slasher, like I Know What You Did Last Summer, that kind of vibe. I haven't watched the adaptation yet, but I've heard it's pretty good. But this one, I just couldn't get behind the characters. There were a lot of stupid decisions that they made that just, oh, I couldn't believe some of the stuff they were doing. I didn't like their friendship, didn't particularly like their writing, but you can get through it pretty fast. And I wouldn't have read this one if it weren't for my buddy read group on Instagram. We actually have the discussion tonight, so I can't tell you what everybody else thought, but I have a feeling it's gonna be a fun chat either way. But yeah, I wouldn't recommend that one. I don't really have much to say about it. It's just a survival story about these 2 girls who are going off to college and decide to go camping and hiking before they leave, and they have no experience, and yeah, not good, not my favorite at all. And then my next book was Horror Store by Grady Hendrix, which I enjoyed, and I love Grady Hendrix. The Southern Book Club's Guide and My Best Friend's Exorcism are 2 of my favorite horror novels, so I was really looking forward to this one because it's set in a store that's much like IKEA, and actually the physical book looks like an IKEA catalog, but I listened to it on audiobook, and I thought it took quite a bit to get into anything scary. This is not as gross or as haunting or creepy as Grady Hendrix's other works, of the ones that I have read. So it just didn't feel like Grady Hendrix until maybe halfway through, and then it started to get into what I would think is quintessential Grady Hendrix. But the pacing was a little off for me. I really appreciated the ending. I thought the ending was kind of interesting. But yeah, it just wasn't my favorite. I still gave it 3 stars and would recommend it, especially if you have Audible, because it's part of the Audible Plus catalog, so you can listen to it there. So not my favorite of Grady Hendrix works, but still enjoyable, still a good October read for me. And then at 3.5 stars, I have The Death of Jane Lawrence by Caitlin Starling. And the first half of this book was stellar for me. I love the atmosphere. I really liked Jane Lawrence as a character. I really liked the romance that was brewing in here, and the ending was pretty epic as well. But there's something in the second half, I think it was pacing, and it got a little tedious. There was a lot of characters in this manner, and it was just not what was promised in the first half. I just don't think delivered in the second, which can happen sometimes, but I do think it's worth reading if you like haunted house stories. And we're following Jane Lawrence, who came to this arrangement. It is a marriage of convenience with a surgeon, and he agrees to this marriage if she agrees not to spend any nights in the family manor. But of course she ends up spending the night there, and something happens with her husband. He believes that she's an apparition, and then they wake up in the morning and he remembers nothing. So she's trying to discover what's going on in this house, who did she marry, but she's also really into medicine and surgery. She's not squeamish around blood at all, so she's a very interesting character in her own right. And we meet the neighbors, the staff. It's just a lot, but I had fun with it. Again, it's a perfect atmospheric book for October. I still think it'd be a fun one to read in November as well. Then we have a 4.5 stars, so you can see how great my rating was this month. And this is one of my favorite thrillers of all time now, and that is They Never Learn by Lane Fargo. And if you like Dexter, you need to read this. It is following 2 characters, one who's a student at a university and one who is a prof at a university. And the prof is a Dexter-like character. She is killing people, but she's killing men who she deems are unworthy, who mistreat women, who assault women. She has a past that is interesting and slowly evolves. She's a really, really compelling character. I thought the ending was fun as well. and I like to see how the two storylines came together. It's very much dark academia and just a really good time. I flew through that one. Next is the book that got me out of my reading slump, and that is If the Shoe Fits by Julie Murphy. This was part of my Once Upon a Book Club of book box, and I have a vlog for that and an unboxing, so I will link that in the cards and down below. But this is a very loose Cinderella retelling. It is as if modern day Cinderella meets The Bachelor, and it's so much fun, especially if you got that book box to get all the little gifts that went along with it. But this is billed as a romance, and it's definitely a romance. It's our main character. Her stepmother is a producer of a show called Before Midnight, which is pretty much The Bachelor, and they need some contestants to fill in. So Cindy, our main character, steps up and she fills in, and she thinks this would be a good opportunity to promote her shoe line. She is a shoe designer, and she has no expectations of actually falling in love with the suitor, but of course that is what happens. But I would say that the romance is in the background. It's really about her discovering herself, her worth, making friendships with all of the other contestants. They're of course the stereotypical villain that we always see in The Bachelor, but her relationships with her roommates on this show was really sweet, and I liked all the conversations they had, and also her relationship with her stepmom and her stepsister. So yeah, I really had a fun time with this. This is Julie Murphy's first adult novel. She wrote the Dumpling series, which is one of my favorites. Pumpkin, the third book, is one of my favorite YA books of all time. So I really, really love this. This is the first book in the Meant to Be series, and the second book, I think it's called By the Book, and it's a Beauty and the Beast retelling, and that's gonna be written by Jasmine Guillory. So I think that's fun that each of the books in these series are inspired by a Disney movie and written by a different author. So that's a good time, highly recommend that one. And then the next one I gave 5 stars, and it is the book that comes out in 2022, I think April. I'll put the actual date here. It is Part of Your World, speaking of Disney retellings, and this is by Abby Jimenez, who officially is one of my favorite romance authors. I will read anything she writes. The Friend Zone series is one of my favorites. Happily Ever After and Life's Too Short. The second and third book in that series are phenomenal, but I think I like Part of Your World even more. This is the start of a new series from Abby Jimenez, and I guess it's based on Little Mermaid. There are hints. Our main character, she has red hair, and it's really about these two characters coming from completely different worlds but falling in love and trying to make it work, but they know that there are going to be so many complications in that, and there's a big like sheepdog, so you get the dog from Little Mermaid as well. So there's some nice nods to the original story. But if you like Gilmore Girls or Heart of Dixie, you'll love this book. It's really got those vibes where the main character is a surgeon from a big town. She gets into a car accident. She runs off the curb in a small town in the middle of nowhere, and this guy tows her out, and it's fate, and they form an instant connection. But he is a carpenter, and he runs an inn, and she is a world-renowned surgeon, and they both come from families who are very important in their communities, and they're trying to make it work. They live hours apart, but there's some miscommunication in here, but it makes so much sense. It really dives into emotional and domestic abuse our main character experiences in her past relationship. And I read the author's note, and Abby Jimenez talked to Ashley Spivey, who you may know from social media, and she was a victim of domestic violence, and she talks about emotional abuse, and she really got advice from her and what a victim of that would want to hear. So it's just so well done. Abby Jimenez always takes some darker, deeper, real life issues and brings them into her romance, which makes them feel more real, more relatable, and just the connections and chemistries between these characters are brilliant. This is steamy as well. I just love, 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 love this book, and I know that we are getting a sequel to it of our main character's best friend, who I absolutely adore. She's one of my favorite friends in fiction now. I can go on and on about this book, but it doesn't come out for a few months, so I'll keep talking about it until the release day. My next 5-star book is one that really took me by surprise, and that is The Lighthouse Witches by CJ Cook. And I've seen that a lot of people have been hauling this lately, and I hope that everybody reads it and loves it as much as I do, because it was fantastic. This is one of the perfect witchy books for me. It is atmospheric. There's great lore and history in here, some really relatable characters, great sisterhood in here as well. So we are following 3 main characters. There are 3 timelines. It can be a little bit confusing, but trust me, it's worth it. So we're following one woman, Luna, in 2021, and her sisters and her mother went missing in 1998, and then one of her sisters turns up, and she has not aged a day since she went missing in 1998. And there's a lot of lore on this Scottish island where they were living, that there are witches who turn children into changelings because of they are haunting this island because of the witch trials that happened back in the day. So we're getting Luna's perspective in 2021, we are getting her mom's perspective in 1998, and then we're also getting somebody's grimoire who is talking from the past of where the curse began. So it's brilliantly woven. It's so fantastic. I know that CJ Cook has a book called The Nesting that a lot of people love, and I will have to check out because this blew me away. I had no idea how much I would fall in love with this story. And last but not least, this is so bittersweet, I have The Book of Magic by Alice Hoffman. And I should mention, I almost forgot, I actually read 9 books because I reread Magic Lessons, which is a 5-star read, right up there with The Book of Magic. So Magic Lessons is the first prequel in the Practical Magic series, and you've probably seen or heard of the movie. And this one is the first sequel and the conclusion of that series, and I cried my eyes out. This is such a bittersweet book. We return to so many of the beloved characters from all the books except for the first one, because the first one takes place during the Salem witch trials, and these ones are more modern day. But we are seeing how the Owens family, who were cursed, and all the women in the Owens family cannot find true love. Anybody that they're fall in love with will die, and this is how that curse finally ends, generations and generations later. And I just bawled my eyes out. It was so beautiful. If you are already a fan of the series, I think you're gonna be happy with this conclusion. Even if you've only seen the movie and you don't feel like reading the prequels, I think you'll get a lot out of this book. But I do recommend at least the first prequel, The Rules of Magic, if you love the movie, because we're following the aunts from the movie, them as children and teenagers and into their early adulthood. So yeah, I could gush about this series forever as well, but I was so pleased with this conclusion, and I love that everything that Alice Hoffman writes. I recommend all of her work because she is brilliant. So that's it. October was definitely an interesting reading month for me. I got some spooky books in. I read a couple of romances because I really felt like I needed them. And I'm just wondering what the best book you read in October was. Let's talk about them in the comments. And if you've read any of these, if you love Practical Magic, let's gush about it in the comments. And I will see you in my next video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye for now.